When you play a game, oftentimes you start to see the patterns and similarities, from which some are more obvious than others. I had an uncanny feeling when playing Ghost of Tsushima, that it was the strangest mix of Dynasty Warriors, Tenchu, Assassin Creed and Red Dead Redemption 2 out of all things. It must have been a very conscious choice by developers to make the game how it is. I don't really know how long it will take me to explain the ways in which this title is truly great, at the same time putting some light on the aspects and elements that were messed up royally. I think that game development teams just got so big that we can have whole spectrum of different people that are trying to make a different game while working on the same one at the same time. And yes, I will try to answer the question from this video title. Do not take me for some cheap clickbait. I am an expensive one, so let's get on with the show. As the samurai reviewer tradition tells us, we should start with a story told here. So it is very loosely based on the story of Mongol invasion on Japan at the end of 13th century. Names of characters were changed and most of them were made up anyway. The whole game starts with a Battle of Komoda Beach, where 80 Tsushima's samurai fight against the invading force counted in thousands. Since it is very beginning of the game, it won't be a spoiler if I tell you that samurai were wiped out almost completely, leaving alive only two most important lords on the island, Shimura and Sakai. This is a point where the latter one needs to gather allies from the remaining native population of the island and rescue the former one. Forcing Mongols out of the territory would be nice as well, but that is a long and tiresome way to achieve those goals. One thing was especially strong in storytelling, when I visited the battlefield from the start of the game, with a woman who, like our hero, lost everything. When they were talking with great respect about fallen warriors as they watched what was left of Tsushima samurais. I don't think I ever experienced something like this in video game before. I was truly heartbroken for fictional characters that I barely knew. The main story of the game is excellent. It is simple, it is powerful, it is emotional. Yes, I know it is flawed in several moments, but still I loved it. It is an older story we tell ourselves, the hero journey. When it comes to side stories in Ghost of Tsushima, there are plenty of them. Some are chains of several missions telling the longer tales, and some are just one-offs. What makes me glad is the fact that most of them are well written. They tell us about different kinds of people caught in a painful embrace of war. Some of the tales sear us with hot flames, others make us shiver from cold-blooded brutality. Some makes us happy that people can help each other even in darkest hours. Others make us disgusted that humans are capable of so many atrocities. There is everything here. Love and hate, loyalty and betrayal, kindness and merciless. I'm glad that so many of them go beyond surface level and do not show us or tell us in dialogues all. That we have to use our experiences to fill the subtle gaps in them. Not all are equally good, some of course I consider as fails of writing team, but still overall level is rather high for a long video game like this. The bulk of what this game even is in its essence are the characters that are building the stories told here. The first of those figures would be Jin Sakai, the son of Kazumasa Sakai, and the nephew to Lord Shimura. Our protagonist and the man from whose perspective we observe the world and events during the action of a game. You could say that he's a cold-blooded murderer, but that would be really misrepresenting what he really is, and that's a partisan and a freedom fighter opposing the occupying forces of the Mongols. Yes, he does some really horrible things, but still it is in his human, God-given right to fight the aggressors who oppress his people by all means necessary. But that's my opinion. I know maybe as many people will agree as disagree, as it is a very dividing topic. Revenge as a part of an honor etiquette I am against. as I try myself not to be vindictive, and sometimes I fail at that, so I'm not blameless in that aspect. But one thing really makes him partially a villain. I mean his lack of understanding of authority. Even if samurai and even whole shogunate was wrong, it is always a bad idea to teach your own people to oppose the forces of order in your own realm. I know oftentimes those forces are used as tools of oppressive regimes, but still, if you can't have some kind of trust between social layers of population, then you cannot really have a healthy functioning country at all. And by the way, as the side note, that was really stupid in the main story that people thought Mongols learned poison from Jin Sakai's actions in Shimura Castle. It would be impossible as there were no survivors to even make that happen. It is a very big logical mistake, but it is what it is, I guess. It was just used as a plot device and really poorly at that. Okay, so then we got Lord Shimura, uncle and a sensei for our main protagonist. Captured by Mongol leader and kept hostage in Kaneda Castle, he represents the old traditional values of feudal Japan. He is a true samurai from blood and bone. He wants to do the right thing and fight clean and honorable, even if the opposing side is not willing to do the same. What the game showed me in cutscenes was that he truly loved his nephew Jin, and was heartbroken by the fact he didn't stay on the same side of samurai values, but chose to overcome the impossible odds by any means necessary. Lord Shimura blamed for that another character on our list, namely Yuna, woman that saved Jin Sakai's life after the initial battle for the island of Tsushima. She was a thief before the war. After Mongols invaded the island, her main goal is to find her brother Taka, who is surprisingly well-skilled blacksmith apprentice. We of course got plenty more supporting characters, but these three, Jin, Lord Shimura and Yuna, are what gives us the core of the story. Some of the other ones are used to fill the game with both serious tales and comic reliefs. Stories in this game show us that even the best of characters have their flaws, their sins, and that those things do not make them bad, it just makes them imperfect, human. I was really impressed by some of the gentle implied tales of bad things made for good reasons. It really deepens the narration in this title. We need to talk about one more character, and that is Tsushima Island itself, and let's get one thing right out of the way. How the island looks in-game is not how it looks in real life. It is pimped out and fantasized version of a real location. Oftentimes we can observe it in games, where they make the location more beautiful than real life. That is, before mentioned fantasy element. However, I think it is not a bad thing. On the contrary, it shows us how beautiful our human skills really are. But we can observe what is already here and make it even better. That is my idea of heaven, to be honest, that we are in what seems to be a perfect place, the most beautiful piece of work of Creator, and we hope to make it better and better going through infinity. Okay, but let's get back on Earth. We are here to talk about the video game and not metaphysical endgame, so to speak. No pun intended. World in Ghost of Tsushima is very distinct, even if it looks similar to other ones we saw in past titles. Here we got unique elements like tall grasses and fields of flowers dancing on the wind. It is both very beautiful and very ugly at the same time. Beautiful because of the nature side of things, great views, flourishing flora and fauna. And still, it is painted with a brush of war to perverse it all. The death and destruction make dark spots in this land full of light. The duality of grim and bright is striking here, boldened by the day-night cycle. The map is very big for a video game. It's not as big as the real Tsushima Island, that would be crazy and to no purpose really. But still, it feels like you are on a decent sized island. I wonder if some of it was procedurally made, cause it has less unique locations and details than Red Dead Redemption 2 game world. But still, I cannot see any distinct procedural patterns. Overall, I think the game world is great and very fitting in this title. What's there more to say? Ah yes, concluding the story aspect of the game, there are some minor gripes. For one, I wish events in the game were more consistent. Sometimes storyline elements and characters' reactions don't make much logical sense. Could use more polishing in that aspect. The other one would be that game blocks you from stepping into main story areas when not on the right mission, with rain of arrows and message that overwhelming force is trolling you. That's one way to do it. I would prefer to really face that so-called overwhelming force, but I guess we can't have everything, right? Okay, so let's jump into gameplay now. First of all, I don't think it's just a big action game with RPG elements. I think it is an RPG with action combat and platforming elements. But truly, who cares how one categorizes it? More important thing is how it actually plays, and I am happy to say that it plays very well. Controls are easy and responsive, yet they give you a whole spectrum of different moves. One thing I would complain about was that riding horses was not really as good as in recently played Red Dead Redemption 2, but that's a very high bar, so I got used to it quickly and it was fine in reality. Camera work is really nice, it auto-adjusts distance depending on the scene. You get option to adjust field of view on PC, so I tested it and I think default works best, but if someone else feels otherwise, that's a good thing that there's an option for that. But I have a feeling that what you really wanna know is if combat is up to par, and I am happy to report that combat is excellent here, fast and visceral, which rewards good play and punishes for mistakes. Felt like it sits somewhere between Sekiro and Elden Ring in difficulty, speed and move options. Game offers 4 different stances in combat. You can stance, dance and stagger effectively different types of enemies. You can also wait for the opening when you parry or dodge and then go for the stagger or for quick damage instead. Really good to have different combat options that are not forced but chosen by player. I stuck with the first stance most of the time, cause it felt like I was most precise then. Don't know why, maybe animations were to my subconscious liking, so it made me play better, who knows. What is the most amazing in the combat gameplay is the fact that you can choose to be stealthy son of a gun, and it is very well done. I felt like I was playing Tenchu back on PlayStation 1, or one of the old Assasin Creed games. As always in games where I have an option, I first try to be as stealthy as possible and assassinate or avoid as many enemies as I could, until I was uncovered and only then I went full samurai mode. But you are not always solo versus your foes. Some of the missions go into Dynasty Warriors mode and you storm the place face on from the start. Really nice variety to the combat scenarios, which I appreciate greatly. Of course, gameplay has its flaws as well. For example, it is nice to see bandits fight with Mongols, but it all goes sideways when you accidentally approach them from the wrong side. And you see them just standing together like bunch of pals until you trigger the script. Oh well. Killing wounded enemies is served and named here as ending suffering, but maybe they could recover and change their lives. I guess this is a samurai way. And by the way, enemies are really deaf plenty of times. They cannot hear their companions dying just few feet behind them. Game is quite difficult even on medium setting. At the start I kept switching between medium and easy until I learned the precise dance good enough to go through all the difficulty levels, including lethal, the hardest one, where every mistake is punished severely. I was kinda proud of myself. Still, I would prefer one difficulty setting, even if it was automatically scaled to the player's skill. For which game already has a system when you are trying to cut bamboo poles and you keep failing, the game will automatically extend the time you get to complete the key sequence. If we are already here, let's talk about different game systems and how they function and interact with each other. Let's start with navigation, which is well done. Instead of annoying markers, mini-maps and radars, The game will show you the direction by the wind, which will guide you. Genius idea, and it looks awesome at the same time. The only minus is that you need to unmark your objective in order to see the game world calm without any wind. Otherwise you are in Witcher 3 mode, I guess. By the way, some navigation/climbing mechanics are next level long. Fortunately, not very hard, so they were not a source of any frustration for me. The only thing I can complain about navigation is that there is a fast travel option. My long-term opinion on the subject is that the journey from one point to another should be an experience in itself. When you get beautiful map with many interesting places to explore, fast travel only diminishes value of that world. But that's one man's opinion. Good thing there is plenty of ways to progress character. You can choose which path you take. And to make things even better, you don't need to worry that you have chosen wrong. Cause in the end you will unlock it all. Just need a little patience, samurai. Hi! Nice touch is that there are interesting short stories tied to the gear that you acquire during gameplay. It makes it more valuable if you care about stories at all, and I do, so again, I appreciate it greatly. On the other hand, I am a little bit worried that this game has so much Ubisoftication built in. I would much prefer to visit smaller amount of different locations, do different things, than repeat the same elements dozens and dozens of times. I am talking about things like following foxes to the shrines repeated over and over again. This is madness. I am clearly biased, because as you may or may not know already, I prefer more cinematic or storytelling approaches to game design. I do not enjoy minigames so much these days, so you won't be shocked if I tell you that I didn't enjoy before mentioned bamboo cutting minigame much. I am not a pianist or a teenager for the love of sake. So it seems the game is a mix between cinematic experience, good storytelling and plenty of things to do for the enjoyers of minigames and completionists. Cause man oh man, there is plenty of things to collect here, don't you get me even started. Okay, so the closing point for the game systems would be the fact that you can save the game state at any moment. And even if it doesn't save every single thing but more general state, you still do not lose a lot of progress, probably like 5-minute stops. This is a big relief after, again, recently played Red Dead Redemption 2, where you are losing tens and tens of minutes of progress if you haven't completed the mission, and you had to finish your gaming session immediately. Okay, so that's all fine and dandy, but now comes the big elephant in the room that we need to address, and that is the big DLC expansion that came along with Director's Cut of the game, the Iki Island. The first big mistake is that game lets you go to the expansion pack area without completing the base game. I made that mistake and I paid the price, cause the story was spoiled for me partially. Iki Island feels too much like a video game and not enough like an experience. I don't know why devs thought it was a good idea since base game was enough video gamey already. New challenges and puzzles make you change armor sets in order to complete them. And I am not a fan of that at all, but it is what it is. The only redeeming quality of a DLC is the main story that was good enough and well acted. I told you plenty about the story and gameplay, so as samurai reviewer tradition dictates again, now's the time to talk about technical state of a game. After setting custom high details, game was running around 120 FPS, like recently reviewed Red Dead Redemption 2. But it has way worse 1% lows, which in turn results in way worse and inconsistent frame times, so even if FPS counter shows around the same number, Ghost of Tsushima feels and looks far less smooth. Remember folks, number is just a number, the experience is what matters. The worst part is that performance seems to degrade the longer you play, so reset when you observe it does in order. It is some kind of memory swallowing caused by unnecessary allocation due to some error in memory management by engine. Lowering textures one notch helped immensely to prolong the smooth gameplay period. Still, graphics are very good and the addition of clearer image anti-aliasing methods is a welcome change. When I compared Temporal AA to the SMAA, the latter was way clearer image but more aliased. Duh. The good compromise was choosing SMAA T2X. The biggest downside of visual presentation in Ghost of Tsushima were not so good body and face animations for characters during cutscenes and transitions. Combat animations I thought were top tier, so maybe that was the reason, as it seems the most animation resources were put there. Another factor that would indicate that was the case was fading to black when changing from gameplay to cutscene and back. It is not the most elegant and pleasant solution, but it is the simplest and most efficient from a business perspective, I guess. Still, the best thing in visual side of things were views and vistas on both islands. Some of them were literally breathtaking. It of course have its price, which was paid because of games still releasing on PlayStation 4. I'm talking about visible pop-ins of shapes and shadows, too near to the camera, especially when galloping on horseback. We've seen it already in titles like Black Desert Online. Lastly, user interface is functional and readable, but it lacks some flair and pizzazz. I know it sounds strange talking about UI, but neatly done interface adds great value to the gaming experience. It is functional and not bad looking here, but it didn't impress me in any way. And now's the time for my favorite part of any review, cause it's always short and rarely I have anything to complain about. The audio. Ah, yes. Music so fitting, delicate flutes and other things that make it feel Japanese. And it pulls emotional strings just at the right moments. Very well done indeed. Sounds were also very good, although sometimes sound stages were not placed perfectly and volume for some close effects can be too much for my weird out ears. All in all, audio gets high praise from me. Few words about technical problems and bugs. The major one would be implementation of NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency, which in this game instead of decreasing latency makes it triple from around 11 milliseconds to over 30, so keep it set to off or test for yourself if it was patched hopefully by the time you're playing. The other one was when sometimes, rarely but still, sound effects would stop to play for several seconds and then come back. That occurred mostly in big battles. Strange indeed. So that's about it. Not many problems with the game really. And I played early PC version before several patches were served. But I haven't read any notes for them, so I don't know what was fixed and if any new bugs were introduced. It is yet another one of those long games that I enjoyed greatly. Maybe not many of its elements are on the masterpiece level, but the sum of its parts make an excellent whole. This is yet another game where, during several cutscenes, I became very touched and emotional. Maybe my cold heart started to melt some time ago. Or maybe stories and their execution in games is getting better and better, cause I remember the same feeling like this in my younger days, when some scenes in best of movies made me speechless and soft inside. So maybe we come to conclusion here, but the most difficult part in reviewing process when it comes to creative and artful human endeavors is what it really makes us feel. Because we can cut all those titles to pieces, strip them apart, and give notes to them individually and as a whole, but that would be missing the point. This is the reason why I do not grade games that I review. No need to do that, even though I was raised on gaming magazines that gave points as a final note, depending on scale where maximum was a 5 or 10 or whatever. We can do without that, truly. It's enough that I say to you that Ghost of Tsushima is an amazing game, and I recommend it to any adult player that is listening to this right now. Just go and play it, you won't regret a single moment. And when you are finished, come back for some more recommendations from an old boomer gamer like me, in another great late review.